In the hard years after World War II, Britain was a country learning how to make do with less. Steel was scarce, money was tight, and people needed machines that could work, not impress. Out of that necessity came a vehicle that would eventually become one of the most recognizable names in the world. But at the beginning, nobody was thinking about prestige. They were thinking about survival, usefulness, and whether a vehicle could do the job of a tractor, a truck, and a car without failing under pressure. The story begins with Maurice and Spencer Wilkes, two brothers at Rover, looking for a practical solution on a windswept Welsh beach. According to the story often told, one of them drew the idea in the sand, a rough outline of a vehicle built for the real world rather than the showroom. It had to be simple, rugged, and capable of handling mud, fields, hills, and roads that were often little better than tracks. Its body was made from surplus aircraft aluminum, not because it was elegant, but because it was available. In those post-war years, that was enough reason. Every choice was guided by necessity. The first Land Rover was not designed to seduce. It was designed to endure. Farmers saw it as a tool. The military saw it as a dependable workhorse. Explorers, engineers, and government crews saw something else too. A machine that could go where others would hesitate. It earned trust in the most unforgiving places, and trust, once earned, can become more powerful than style. But at the time, that trust came with a problem. Land Rover was respected, yes, but respected as a utility machine. It was the kind of vehicle people depended on, not the kind they dreamed about. That was the tension hidden inside its success. How do you take a product known for mud, tools, and hard labor, and give it a second life without losing the honesty that made people believe in it in the first place? How do you transform a vehicle that was once described almost like a tractor for the road into something desirable, even aspirational? That question would shape everything that followed. And this is where the Land Rover story becomes more than automotive history. It becomes a lesson in reputation, patience, and the slow building of value. Because before a brand can ask for admiration, it must first earn confidence. Before it can command attention, it must prove itself in silence, under stress, over years. So how did a simple post-war utility vehicle become the foundation for one of the most prestigious names in motoring? That is where the real turning point begins. After the war, Britain was a country of repair yards, ration books, and hard choices. In that landscape, Land Rover did not arrive as a luxury dream. It arrived as a solution to a very practical problem. Farmers needed something tougher than a car, cheaper than a tractor, and versatile enough to work fields during the week and haul supplies on the weekend. The first Land Rovers were honest machines, built with aircraft-grade aluminum because steel was scarce, and designed with a kind of blunt intelligence that spoke directly to the needs of the time. Nothing about them was decorative. Everything about them had a job, and that was both their strength and their curse. For years, people saw Land Rover as a tool, not a desire. A vehicle for mud, fences, livestock, and military outposts. In the towns and cities, it was often dismissed with a smile, the way one might talk about a pair of work boots. Useful, yes. Admired, not really. In some circles, it was even called a tractor for the road, and the phrase carried a quiet insult. It meant durable but also rough, capable but not aspirational. A Land Rover could cross a river, but it would not be invited to a fine dinner. Still, something important was happening beneath that plain exterior. Every time one started in freezing weather, crawled through deep mud, or survived conditions that would stop other vehicles cold, it built a kind of reputation that advertising alone could never buy. Farmers trusted it because it showed up every day. Soldiers trusted it because it kept moving when the terrain turned hostile. Explorers trusted it because failure was not an option. Slowly, almost stubbornly, the vehicle began to collect a rare asset: belief. And belief changes everything. Once people trust a machine to do the impossible, they begin to imagine it in new settings. If it can endure the worst roads in the world, perhaps it can handle the best roads too. If it can carry tools through rain and stone, perhaps it can carry people with comfort as well. That question was the turning point. Land Rover's challenge was no longer how to prove itself in the field. It was how to translate that proven toughness into something people would want to be seen in. That shift did not happen by accident. It required a new kind of thinking, one that respected the original purpose but understood a deeper truth. Reliability is the first luxury. Before leather seats, before polished wood, before any sense of prestige, there had to be trust. And once trust existed, refinement could follow without feeling fake. The next step would not erase Land Rover's rugged past. It would build on it. And that is where the story becomes far more ambitious. Because when a workhorse earns respect, the real question is no longer whether it can survive. The question becomes how far that trust can be taken before it turns into desire. By the time Land Rover had proven itself in mud, snow, deserts, and floodwater, it had already earned something far more valuable than publicity. It had earned permission to be taken seriously. That was the turning point, because in the automotive world, reliability is not just a feature. It is a reputation built one broken bridge, one muddy field, one impossible journey at a time. Farmers trusted it. Surveyors trusted it. Soldiers trusted it. Explorers trusted it. And when people trust a machine to get them home, they begin to trust the name on the grill as well. But trust alone does not create desire. That was the next challenge. Land Rover had become respected, yes, but respect can still trap a brand if it remains attached only to utility. To move from working tool to cultural icon, it needed something more, the ability to speak to comfort, to taste, to aspiration. That shift did not happen overnight. It required patience, restraint, and a deep understanding of what buyers were really asking for when they said they wanted something better. They did not want less capability. They wanted capability without punishment. That is where the Range Rover entered the story, and it changed everything. Imagine the surprise of the first buyers seeing a vehicle with real off-road strength, yet finished with more grace, more space, more poise. It was not pretending to be rugged. It had already proven that. Now it was adding leather, quietness, elegance, and a more refined driving experience. It was as if Land Rover had taken the voice of the countryside and taught it to speak in the language of the city. For the brand, this was a masterstroke. It did not abandon its roots to chase luxury. It elevated those roots. The same toughness that once made the vehicle indispensable on farms became the very reason affluent buyers found it appealing. In a world full of polished products that could not endure real life, Land Rover offered something rare: prestige with backbone. And that is the real lesson hidden inside this climb from mud to manners. When a brand first wins belief through usefulness, it can later earn admiration through refinement. But if it tries to reverse that order, it usually fails. Land Rover understood this better than most. It built trust before it built glamour. It proved itself before it dressed itself up. And once that foundation was solid, the rest became possible. So the question is simple: what could your own product become if people trusted it first, and only then discovered how far it could rise? By the time Land Rover had proven itself in mud, rain, salt, and silence, something deeper had happened than simply building a dependable vehicle. It had earned belief. That is the turning point most brands never reach. They can advertise performance, promise quality, and dress themselves in polished language, but trust is not declared. It is accumulated, mile by mile, season after season, through the kind of consistency that cannot be faked. And once trust was there, the next challenge was not to invent a new identity, but to expand the meaning of the old one. The original Land Rover had been designed for work, for fields, for hard weather and harder lives. Yet people began to see something else in it: calm authority, a rugged confidence, a machine that could cross a muddy lane in the morning and still look at home outside a country house by afternoon. That transformation did not happen by accident. It happened because the brand understood a simple truth: luxury means little if it cannot rest on credibility. So when the Range Rover arrived, it did not reject Land Rover's past. It refined it. It took the same sense of capability and wrapped it in comfort, space, and quiet elegance. The result was not just a better vehicle. It was a new social meaning. Now, the same name that once suggested utility could also suggest taste, discernment, and success without arrogance. It was prestige with roots, confidence with mud on its boots. And that, perhaps, is why the Land Rover story still feels so relevant today. In a market full of products trying to look important before they have proven themselves, Land Rover took the longer road. It built reputation first. Then it built desire. That sequence remains one of the most powerful lessons in business and branding. Before people pay more, they must believe more. If this story made you think differently about how trust is built, give the video a like. And I'd like to ask you this. In your own work or business, are you trying to look premium first? Or are you still earning the kind of trust that makes premium possible? If stories like this interest you, subscribe, because there is always more to learn from the brands that started with a problem and ended up shaping an entire standard.